Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya. Hari Om. Glad to be here yet again to share my reflections on this series of Ramana's Atma Vichara. Today we are going to discuss one of the frustrations of a seeker, the one who is seeking the self-knowledge and goes on studying text after text, trying to know the self. And more you study, more you gain the knowledge of what scriptures say, and yet what you are seeking, the knowledge of the self, seem to be far away. So let's see what Bhagavan Ramana Maharshi has to say, or we'll try to understand how to go about this based on Bhagavan Ramana Maharshi's teachings. So let's look at the text Upadesa Saram and Upadesa Unthiyar, verse number 27. Let me chant the verse. Jnana varjita ajnana hina chit jnana mastikim jnatu mantaram. In Tamil, the text goes as Arivum Ariyamayum Atra Arive Arivahum Unmai Idundipara Arivadakku Ondrillai Undipara. So that's the verse. Now let's try to understand the literal meaning of this. What he says is, the true knowledge is devoid of the knowledge and ignorance. Is there anything to be known, or is there anything else to be known? This is the literal meaning. Now let's try to understand. What do we mean by knowledge in the worldly sense? Is that the more thoughts I have about something, then I say I know that something. So the more the number of thoughts I have about an object, then I say, aha, I know what this object is. So basically, when I say I know something, it is supported by many thoughts about that particular object. And what is ignorance is again a thought, I don't know. So ignorance is I don't know thought, and the knowledge is I know thought, supported by many thoughts about a particular thing or the other. So now, what the sloka says is that the true knowledge is something other than these two. The true knowledge is something other than what we normally regard as knowledge, or for that matter ignorance. So, and in Upadesa Unthiyar, he goes on to say, Unmai idu This is the truth. Then he says, Arivadat kondrum illai. There is nothing else to be known. Now, this is a very important verse which can remove the frustrations of a seeker. Because when we try to know something, we try to collect more and more thoughts about something. And that's what we do when we try to understand something. And when it comes to self-knowledge also, we try to do the same thing. Where when we say, I am trying to know the self, I am trying to read and understand what this self is. Again, I am trying to collect thoughts about the self. But Bhagavan Ramana Maharishi says, the knowledge of the self, the true knowledge, is not this. And he says, it's not the ignorance also. So, what he is alluding to is the knower. The knower who says, I know this, and the knower who says, I don't know this. And that is what you are. You are the knower who says, I know this, and who says, I don't know this. Now, that knower, the self, that's what you are. And that knower, the self, cannot become an object of knowledge. Because if you try to form a thought about the knower, then again, who knows that thought? The knower. So, what Bhagavan Ramana Maharishi is trying to indicate is that don't try to know the self like you try to know anything else by forming a thought. Just understand that you are the knower who knows something and who doesn't know something, and you are the substratum of that I know thought and I don't know thought, and that you, the witness, you, the substratum of that I know thought and I don't know thought, cannot become an object of thought. That's why he says the true knowledge is something which is devoid of this knowledge or ignorance, meaning the true knowledge of who you are cannot be made of thoughts. So then the question arises, then how do I know myself? First thing we have to understand is, knowing the self is not like knowing any other objects. Knowing any other objects is achieved through thoughts. Knowing the self is certainly not achieved through the self, because the self is the creator of the thought, is the witness of the thought. Therefore, we say the knower. So, to know the self, not only you can't use the thoughts, you need not use the thoughts, because just understand that you are the knower and give up the attempt to know it through thoughts. So, this is what this particular verse is trying to indicate, is that we should give up trying to form a thought about the self, or say, I don't know who I am. Both are wrong. If you say, I know the self is like this, that is wrong. To say, I don't know who I am is also wrong. But these two are thoughts, and who is saying that? You are saying it. So, the true knowledge is understanding that I need not know myself through thoughts and give up my attempt to know me through the thoughts. Meaning, give up my attempt to convert myself into a finite object through thoughts. When that effort is given up, when you are free from any attempt to create thoughts about you, then you are as you are, and you experience who you are without the aid of any thoughts. You experience who you are without the aid of any thoughts. Now, that is what is achieved through this path of self-inquiry, where you have to experience yourself, but not with the aid of any thoughts. So that is what is indicated in this particular stanza, where the true knowledge is beyond the knowledge which is made up of thoughts, or ignorance, which is I don't know thought. You are beyond these two, and knowing that is the true knowledge. And there is nothing else to be known. Meaning, just understand that you are without trying to capture you in any thought, and remaining in that state will lead to experiencing who you are without any thoughts. Now, we may wonder, then what is the purpose of studying all these scriptures, where so many things are talked about, and there are so many Upanishads, etc. If the self-knowledge is not any of this knowledge, one may wonder. This is where we need to understand something. The purpose of studying the scriptures, especially when we are seeking the self-knowledge, is to understand who we are not. The scriptures explain that we are not a finite entity, and we should give up the wrong notion that we are a finite entity. And also scriptures explain how to give up this wrong notion that I am a finite entity. The scriptures say you are not a finite entity. The scriptures give the logic why you can't be this finite entity. And the scriptures also give us means to get rid of the notion that I am a finite entity. So the purpose of studying scriptures is to understand this process, that I am not a finite entity, and why I can't be a finite entity, and therefore I should give up the wrong notion that I am a finite entity, and how to go about giving up this wrong notion that I am a finite entity. This is the whole purpose of scriptures. And when you do that, and when you get rid of the wrong notions that I am a finite entity, and when you are no longer attempting to create any new thoughts saying that I am a finite entity. And at that state, when you are free from all thoughts, when you are free from all your efforts to form any new thoughts, then only you remain and you experience that. And this is what is described in the traditional language as the self illumines by itself, self-shining, they say, Swayam Prakasha. So, the self-knowledge which is there in me is waiting to be revealed, waiting to be experienced when I give up the wrong notions in the form of thoughts. And when I do that, I come to experience myself, again emphasizing, with no aid of any thoughts. And that is the whole idea of studying scriptures. Bring us to that state where I become free from all thoughts, so that the knowledge which is there within me will shine by itself. And that is the true knowledge, and that is the highest knowledge. Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya.